Does anyone else remember how the Deadpool movie actually came about? Like, people, fanboys mainly, were so upset about the Ryan Reynolds X-Men Origins Wolverine adaptation of Deadpool. And then there was, like, the whole CGI thing that was leaked. And Ryan Reynolds had voiced the character in it. And it just took it years to get traction. But now that it finally did, it's, like, one of the highest grossing... at the time, one of the highest grossing not Marvel, but it was Sony, but like comic book character movies, and it was rated R, and it like completely changed the game. And it makes so much sense that Deadpool was the one that Deadpool was the character that did it in such a weird and strange way. Yo, how's it going, everyone? Welcome to Unbuckled Comics, where I read and review comics just for you. I'm your host, Unbuckled Cape, and today we're looking at Deadpool Classics Volume 1. Before we get started, I'd like to let you know that there is a Facebook and Instagram page of the same title, Unbuckled Comics, where you can keep up with upcoming episodes and add comments to episodes or even DM me. And come September, I'm looking at starting a Patreon, so I'm going to keep you in the loop for that as well. Yeah. I am exhausted today. Thankfully, I'm just recording this intro. I was spent all weekend at a wedding, and we got home a little later this afternoon, and just I am ready for bed. So, I had no episode comments this week, which is kind of nice because it'll shorten this up. And we're going to get rolling right into the review of Deadpool Classics Volume 1. But just before we jump into there, I do want to talk about what we have coming up next month. So next month, we are still doing our almost bi-weekly show. The first episode in August is going to be Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Saturday Morning Adventures. And then the following Thursday, of course, you're going to have your new issue episode. And then we get into the exciting part of August. The second Unbuckled Comics episode in August. Did I say that right? The second episode of Unbuckled Comics in August is going to be a sidekick episode. We're going to be looking at a recommended comic by said sidekick. It's going to be Superman Arkham. And my sidekick is going to be the famed and mod extraordinaire Captain N. And then August, we also have an Unbuckled and Unscripted, and it's our last non-Patreon Unbuckled and Unscripted. And we are going to be looking at Spider-Man, the animated series, the 90s animated series. Yeah, it's a big one. The episode is going to be, maybe right around 2 hours long. From here on out, when I do cartoon episodes like this, we're actually going to have to do them by season because me and the sidekick that I had for that episode just couldn't get through it in less time. There's just so much to talk about. And you might be wondering, okay, well, who's the sidekick for that episode? He is also the famed Captain Alcatraz. The most requested guest that I've had is coming on to Unbuckled Comics. We are going to be serenaded by his lovely voice acting pipes. I am so excited to have him on the show, and I know you guys are excited to hear him. But that's then. This is now. We have Deadpool Classics Volume 1 to talk about, and it is quite topical, seeing how that the Deadpool 3 leaks are out, and there's some shots of Hugh Jackman's Wolverine and his costume, and, other confirmations of some actors or actresses that are being confirmed for the movie. So this is quite topical. But before Ryan Reynolds donned the terrible adaptation of Deadpool in X-Men Origins, and then revived the character in the self-titled Deadpool movies, Deadpool was a less popular comic book anti-hero named, well, he was still named Deadpool, but we're going to get into it. It's not quite the Deadpool you think, so sit back, relax, and here we go. Alright, so, I wish I could say I was a Deadpool fan, before the movies, but it's simply not the case. I did know about him because of Marvel Ultimate Alliance and then Hulk versus Wolverine movie, which go watch the Hulk versus movies. They're awesome. But it wasn't until that beautiful man, Ryan Reynolds, brought him to the big screen that I decided I had to pick up a Deadpool comic, and hey, what a better place to start than Deadpool Classics Volume 1, right? Am I right? I think I'm right. Well, before we answer that, this trade has a lot of names credited to it, and for some reason, I always feel obligated to butcher them in a sad attempt to give credit where credit is due. So, let's do that now, right quick. Story cover art, Rob Liefeld. Writers, Mark Waid, Fabian Nikazi, Joe Kelly. Pencilers, Joe Madureira, Ed McGuinness, Kelly Lashley, Lee Weeks, Ian Churchill. Inkers, Mark Farmer, Norman Lee, Philip Moy, Bob McLeod, Nathan Massengill, Bud LaRosa, Tom Wagerson, Jason Miner, Harry Candelero. I giggled because every time I see the name Harry, I think of the 50 First Dates in the very beginning where they're talking about Henry Roth, and then the one lady's like Harry Para. Well, anyway, W.C. Cariani, colorist, Steve Buccellato, Dan Morshed, Mike Thomas, Digital Chameleon, which is like a group, like a firm, an organization, Christian Lichner, Glynis Oliver, letterers, Chris Elifoldis, oh boy, Dave Lanfear, Richard Starkings, Comic Craft, again another firm, Joe Rosen, not to be confused with Joe Rogan, cover art John Calise, editor Matt Idelson and Susan Gaffney, editor-in-chief Bob Harris. Whew. Painful. They're always so painful. I don't know. Do I even have to do those? But, I feel like I have to do those. But, anyway. The last time we talked Marvel... Wait. Before I say that. Let me look. Deadpool... Okay, so it's not the last time we talked Marvel, but it was our last big, beefy Marvel talk, Spirit of Vengeance. We get a similar art style, except this one's it's brighter. So, and it is an incredible artwork, and again, the bright colors. It has such a classic feel to it. I absolutely dig it. So, So let's dive into that comic, the trade here quick. The first issue in said trade is just a Deadpool appearance in the New Mutants that kind of sets up his own series. So Deadpool appeared a lot in, I assume, the New Mutants, and then he did a lot of X Force. He was in X Force for quite a while in Weapon X comics, and so he was like a supporting cast character. And then we get the first issue in this trade is a New Mutants issue with Deadpool in it, and it sets up Deadpool to have his own ongoing series. So there's a lot going on from other books because of that, and they all kind of converge here. So there is a guy that hired Deadpool named Tolliver, and he hires Deadpool to go and kill the New Mutants. It doesn't work out. He kind of backs out. And then in the first Deadpool issue, Tolliver is dead, and there's this mystery will. We get to see Deadpool and Vanessa. There's Slayback and Juggernaut and Black Tom, and we get like no decent background on any of them or what's going on. And like that's the second issue. So moving on, like we're just kind of thrown into this like mad quest for this Tolliver will, and we know nothing about it. We barely even know what Deadpool's stake in it is, and he's just kind of off being Deadpool on his own. And the mad hunt is by all the aforementioned parties, jockeying for a position, and then Slayback is back, which really the only thing we know about him is that Deadpool killed him at one point. That's pretty much it. And like I said, for some reason, Deadpool has a target on his back because he worked for Tolliver, and I guess people think that he knows about the will. So, yeah. And then Weasel is also working to kind of exploit Deadpool for his own gain in the whole Tolliver will thing. And then Slayback kidnaps Vanessa, who actually was hot on the trail of this Tolliver Wills thing. And again, the whole thing's like really sporadic and fast paced. And maybe that's the point, but for it being, again, and this is diving in with like none of the X-Force, Weapon X, none of the prior knowledge to Deadpool. This really isn't the Deadpool that we're all expecting. Yes, he says outlandish things and has snappy, witty lines and whatnot, but it's not the Ryan Reynolds Deadpool. There's no fourth wall breaks. And it's not the later Deadpool in these comics, and we're gonna touch on that towards the end. I'm gonna kind of save that, but there's just a lot of chaos, and that's not to say that the comic isn't fun. It's just if you're reading to get a like, oh, this is Deadpool's first solo run, there really isn't a ton of Deadpool in it. It's kind of about everyone else at the moment. So then we get Deadpool, Wheeze, Kane, Slayback, and Copycat all converge on like this Tolliver's armory. And of course, Deadpool's clowning around in the armory, and Wheeze discovers the secret weapon, which is actually what the will is. And then we get a fight between Deadpool and Slayback. And it's okay. Again, like Deadpool apparently has killed Slayback, and now he's back from the dead somehow, and he's like mechanically and kind of like a Cable-less type deal, but we don't really know a whole lot of backstory. So like the fight just seems like they're looking for this ultimate weapon to like destroy all weapons, and we find out that the weapon actually literally like destroys all the other weapons so that there is no other option than peace. And it just like seems kind of flat, and like all the other backstories that are tied into it just make it kind of chaotic. And then like during the fight, and this is where it actually gets really important, though. So you kind of gotta. I don't want to say it's a slog to get through it, but it kind of is. You kind of got to slog through these first couple of issues to get to this fight between Deadpool and Slayback, because in this fight, Copycat actually sacrifices herself to save Deadpool, right? And then this weapon goes online, and it's an android kind of in the form of, I can't remember its name, but in Justice League Unlimited, there is that android that was like completely gold. It looks almost identical to that, but this thing is completely white, and it's in the form of a person. It's built like a humanoid type robot, and it turns on. Excuse me. Sorry about that. So when it turns on, it kind of like stomps out, and the weapon kind of diagnoses Slayback and decides that it is in fact a weapon, and he has no capacity for any kind of good in his life, and it just kind of like vaporizes Slayback and he's gone. And then it turns to Kane, decides that he's just a person, turns to Vanessa, she's just a person, and then it goes to Deadpool, and it's contemplating whether it's going to kill Deadpool or not, and then Deadpool basically convinces it to let him live because he's the only person that can save Copycat, right? So, this was a big precipice for the rest of these Deadpool Classic trades. I have 1 through 9. I'm missing quite a few. I'm not sure how far it actually goes, but I have 1 through 9, and the bulk of these are based off of Deadpool and his moral conflict, and this is really the start of it because he's ruthless and doesn't care about anyone in this, and then Vanessa sacrifices herself to save him, and he has to convince this machine that, hey, you need to let me live because I'm the only person that can save her, because if she touches Deadpool long enough, she can copy his abilities and then heal herself, right? At the end of it, Deadpool goes to like kind of confess his... So Copycat and Deadpool have a history, and earlier on in the story, he says that, she was just a kid and it was just kind of like a fling thing and blah, blah, blah. Well, here at the end of the story, after she saves him, he goes to like kind of confess his love, and she cuts him off, and she's basically like, look, I grew up, and maybe you need to grow up too. And it's not that she doesn't like him, it's just that she knows that he has the capability to be so much more. And I actually... So, like, I didn't go out and buy the 9 trades together and read them all together. Like, I would read one and then a couple months later read another. So, going back and reading one, I'm actually glad I came back and read this one, because I kind of remember not liking it. But now with the knowledge of the other 8, this is actually a huge part and a huge setup for the rest of these comics with Deadpool, because this is a point where he's like... he's kind of in love with Vanessa, but she doesn't want him because she wants him to be more and not just be a merc with a mouth. So, and that's where that first like little story arc ends. And it picks back up with Moody Deadpool, who is... it's kind of weird to see because we're used to seeing goofy, crazy, psychotic Deadpool, right? The Ryan Reynolds 2 movies, and then if you ever see him in any like of the Spider-Man, I forget which Spider-Man cartoon he was in an episode, but he was just, he's goofy. He's kind of like Marvel's version of Daffy Duck if you're, looking at the right form of media with him in it. But in this, he's like very moody, very dark, depressed, and then he is attacked by Black Tom's men. We get very little backstory on Black Tom, but again, he and Deadpool have history. So after being attacked, he actually gets a team up with Siren, who is Banshee's daughter, and he also has like his regeneratory powers go like really haywire and are on the fridge, and he's not healing nearly as fast. Throughout the team up, of course, Deadpool continuously is hitting on Siren, and she's like just kind of like brushing it off to the side. And then we also get the Juggernauts return in this one, and there's a huge battle between Deadpool, Siren, and Juggernaut before this Interpol gets involved, because so Black Tom is a bad guy who escapes from prison because the Juggernaut rescues him. He and Juggernaut are real good pals. That's about all I know. And so like Black Tom was dying, and they fixed him by like fusing him with wood, and now the wood keeps growing on him. Like, I don't really understand exactly what's happening, but Juggernaut breaks him out of prison because he believes he has the only person that can save him, and they also need Deadpool to save him. And then Black Tom is in relation, like he's a cousin to Banshee, so like Banshee and Siren are trying to hunt him down because he escaped from prison. So Banshee goes and checks with his Interpol connections while Siren hangs out with Deadpool. And like I said, the battle with Juggernaut, and then they discover that Deadpool's regeneratory powers are kind of on the fritz. And then Interpol shows up, and it's more chaos, more banter. And it's I don't want to say it's more of the same from the first story arc, but it's not a huge step up in improvement. There's still a lot going on very fast, and you don't quite fully understand exactly what's going on. You just know that Black Tom's out of prison and he wants Deadpool. So Siren is following Deadpool because she wants Black Tom, and she almost like she's using him for bait. After the whole Juggernaut Interpol battle, there is a lull in all this action and chaos that does bring human interaction into it. Siren actually tries to reach out to Deadpool, asking about his name, what's under the mask. She's trying to talk to him and make a connection, and he just absolutely rejects her, like just flat out rejects her. And the big question is why. And again, reading it the first time, I didn't really pick up on this because I didn't know a ton about Deadpool. Here's a guy that every other sentence he's, hitting on Siren. And then when she actually kind of opens up to him, he quickly rejects her. And this is a pretty deep look into the character's psyche on how he uses comedy as just like a way to cover up his insecurities, and like constantly hitting on girls, and like basically driving them the other way because he's very insecure with himself and how he looks, and understandably so. So anyway, through Banshee's connections with Interpol, he actually locates Black Tom, who, while Deadpool was fighting Juggernaut and Interpol, he loses a hand. And, in the meantime, Black Tom was able to fuse himself with Deadpool's hand. Gross. For all of the chaos and story hopping, and I'm not really sure what's going on, and there wasn't a ton of backstory here, it really does actually wrap up nicely in the last couple of issues. After Deadpool saves Banshee from Black Tom, he and Tom have a fight. And Tom, after Deadpool saves Banshee from Juggernaut, Deadpool and Juggernaut fight, and Juggernaut ends up taking his mask, and Deadpool gets like infuriated, right? Like, I mean, just screaming no. He's throwing like a toddler tantrum because he doesn't have this mask. And he is just like freaking out about it. And Banshee can't see that he doesn't have the mask. She just sees that Juggernaut and Deadpool are on top of a building, and Deadpool is like screaming in pain. And she doesn't realize it's emotional pain, so she collapses the building, burying Juggernaut, and she has Deadpool's mask, and she's kind of like, here, take it, you big baby. And he's like covering his face, and like he snaps and shows her his face and is like yelling at her, and she kind of gasps out of a reaction of horror. And he's like, yeah, that's kind of what I thought. And she actually touches his face and apologizes for her reaction, which is we get the feeling that that's something that he hasn't received, that kind of compassion before. Because after that, they go back to where Black Tom is, and it's a relatively quick battle. But at the end of it, Deadpool lets him live. And it's a sign of change, because Deadpool is the merc with a mouth. He's a mercenary. He kills everyone that he gets a chance to, especially his enemies. And he even says, after letting Tom live, that it's a bad career decision and this and that, and there's all these things. But we've had, in these stories leading up to this, we've had two major connections, I guess we'll call them, that happened that changed the whole character of Deadpool, from when he's in X-Force and all he is just a merc with a mouth, to Deadpool now switching gears and becoming the anti-hero that we kind of know him as today. One, Vanessa's rejection and kind of a challenge of you can be better. And then two, now Siren's connection with him and opening up and, accepting him for who he is. And then also challenging him to be more than just merc with a mouth. So once that's all said and done, Banshee and Siren take Black Tom to custody. And Deadpool leaves with the doctor who was fusing Tom's body with Deadpool's body parts to try and heal him. And that person is Dr. Kilbrew, who made Deadpool what he was. And the book ends with just Deadpool plopping Kilbrew in a boat, and they drive away, and that's about that. At the end of that, we get a bonus story that actually kind of sets up a storyline in Volume 3 from what I remember. It doesn't have a ton to do with Volume 2, I don't think. You know what, maybe it does. But anyway, we get our first look at T-Ray, who is like Deadpool's arch enemy. He's a fellow mercenary, but like they absolutely hate each other, and T-Ray is a huge, powerful guy. And depending on what you're reading, Deadpool's actually kind of afraid of him in some of the comics. But we also get our first look at Sister Margaret's School for Wayward, I think is it Wayward Children or Wayward Girls? But anyway, it's the place where all the mercs go to get their jobs. And then we also get to see Blind Owl and a quick little preview of how messed up their relationship is. And in the Reynolds movie, and it's going to be hard to ever talk about Deadpool without comparing it to the Reynolds movie, but in the movie Blind Owl, they make her out to be a roommate that he found on Craigslist or something like that, or a roommate that maybe she found him on Craigslist. There's a reference of that. Not the case in the comics. Their relationship is actually really, really messed up. He keeps her as a prisoner, and I remember the details of it, but that all pops up in a later issue, so just there's some back and forth arguing between the two, and Blind Owl has kind of accepted the fact that she's the prisoner, so she doesn't fight it too much, but she has ways of I don't remember what his exact threat is to her. Maybe it was something like rearranging the furniture, but then she threatens, she's like, if you do that, you'll never find your stash of whatever it was again. So She's not kept in a cage, but it's really, really messed up. You don't get to see that through this individual little bonus story here, but it's weird. The story is basically just Wade is being set up to destroy a lab, and the lab is in Canada. It's run by the Canadian government. The Sasquatch is kind of watching over it. He's another mutant that was made in the Weapon X project, and all Deadpool knows is he has to destroy this lab. He was told that no one's there. It's an empty lab. It's just something that needs to be blown up, and he finds out that there's people there, and he kind of shrugs it off. And then he's confronted with Sasquatch, and Sasquatch tells him, like, hey, if this blows up, a lot of people will die because there's active gamma radiations going on. And he, again, has a change of heart where he ends up choosing to do good. And the lab still blows up, but he stops. He's able to help stop the gamma rays from killing anyone. And there's a group of people that set him up, and again that plays into a bigger part later on in the Deadpool classic run. So the story itself it's okay. The main portion of this is about Deadpool's character. Like I said, he's definitely the merc with the mouth. He is constantly running his mouth. At one point in one of the stories, he's in the jungle and he's like narrating. Like it should be in a thought bubble, and it's kind of in a narration block in the panel. And then one of the soldiers that he's stalking says in Spanish, I think I can hear him. He's talking, and Deadpool jumps out of the bush and he's like, of course I'm talking. It's called a monologue, or something like that. Not necessarily a fourth wall break, because there's none. He doesn't break the fourth wall in this comic at all. But it is just like a really funny classic Deadpool moment. And like I said before, the biggest thing here is Deadpool, prior to having his own comics, he was pretty much just a bad guy. But now, right away, we're seeing the shift in morals due to, again, Copycat's rejection and Siren's acceptance of him, to build this long continuing theme of what does Deadpool want to be? Does he want to be a superhero who he mocks all the time, or is he just going to continue to be a low-life merc with a mouth? And it's actually, for a character like this who is on one extreme end, to give him two quick reasons that fast to change kind of who he is, because the guys working on Deadpool at the time were like, you know what, he needs to be an anti-hero, not a side character in the X-Force Weapon X books and stuff like that. And really, that's, excuse me again, reading this comic for the first time, I would have read it and been like, oh, okay, well, I want to know what happens, but I remember not being very pleased, and then shrugging and being like, well, it's early Deadpool, that's why. I can't expect too much of it, right? Now, knowing what I know about the rest of these stories and going back and reading this one, it actually sets everything up so well. But so kind of looking at it, taking away my knowledge of what happens in the future, it's fun when he's being Deadpool. Like the Ryan Reynolds Deadpool. Like the jokes, the funny, the hitting on Siren can be funny at times. Other times it's kind of annoying. But like the self-monologue when he's stalking people and then they hear him, he's like, yeah, of course. It's a monologue, there is a lot of lack of backstory and him, being extremely moody, which again is important. It's just not what we would expect. Look, overall, it's good, not great, right? And before I give you what I think it is, just a quick reminder, because I feel like I don't say it enough. I went from ranking comics on a scale of 1 to 10, that just boring, because I ended up giving everything somewhere between a 6 and an 8. I have 4 rankings. I have the pass on it, which means it's not good enough. I can't recommend reading it. Pick it up. It means read it eventually. Get on it, which is, you should probably read it in your next 5, 6, 7, 8 things. It needs to be up there. And then what are you doing? Which means cut the episode off right now, go buy it and read it. So just wanted to explain that before I give you my final thoughts here. Like I said, it's fun when Deadpool's being Deadpool. But if you have no interest in being a Deadpool completionist, do I think that you can start on volume 2 and know what's going on? No, but I don't know if you're going to be as you're probably not going to be more lost than reading this one as is, because this one was pretty confusing with the lack of backstory, because I didn't read any of the X-Force and things like that. I didn't know anything leading into this. You could probably get away with skipping it. But it is rather important to the rest of these Deadpool classic runs. Especially the first 4 or 5 of them. It's very important to those. So honestly, I'm going back and forth on pick it up and pass on it. And I think it's one that you could end up saying pass on it, because again, it's just okay. It's not a necessity. But then I think I hate to pass on it, because it does set up so much moving forward for this Deadpool run. And it's not a bad comic. I don't not enjoy myself. I don't have to force myself to read it. It's just I'm a little bit lost with it. And the art is great. The little bonus comic, the art's okay, but for the majority of it, the art is absolutely fantastic. Like I said before, it's Marvel, when they got their top dogs out working on comics. Oh my word, is it just, you get sucked into the world around you as you're reading it, and it's great. It's fantastic. And I think probably for that alone is why I'm going to say pick it up. I look, I like the comic. I don't love it. It's just okay. And I think just okay means that, when you read everything that you currently want to read, when you go back and flip through my other episodes, I'm sorry, hold on, let me dig my book out here so I can give you a reference. So looking at my other ones that I have, in the pick it up section, we have Die Hard Year One, New Fantastic Four, Shadow of the Bat, Batman the Avenger Continues, Sword of Azrael 2022, Batman World's Finest 1 through 6, and The Joker Volume 1, Batman One Bad Day, Penguin. Yeah, you know what? Deadpool, let's flip the other way. The ones that we've done that are pass on it is Spirit of Vengeance, Rise of the Midnight Suns, and Batman Birth of the Demon. Deadpool Classics Volume 1 does not, it doesn't deserve to be in a pass on it category. It is good enough for me to tell you at some point, pick it up. So, my final thoughts on Deadpool Classic Volume 1 is pick it up.
1 is pick it up. 2 is pick it up. 3 is pick it up. 4 is pick it up. 5 is pick it up. 6 is pick it up. 7 is pick it up. 8 is pick it up. 9 is pick it up. 10 is pick it up. 11 is pick it up. 12 is pick it up. 13 is pick it up. 14 is pick it up. 15 is pick it up. 16 is pick it up. 17 is pick it up. 18 is pick it up. 19 is pick it up. 20 is pick it up. 21 is pick it up. 22 is pick it up. 23 is pick it up. 24 is pick it up. 25 is pick it up. 26 is pick it up. 27 is pick it up. 28 is pick it up. 29 is pick it up. 30 is pick it up. 31 is pick it up. 32 is pick it up. 33 is pick it up. 34 is pick it up. 35 is pick it up. 36 is pick it up. 37 is pick it up. 38 is pick it up. 39 is pick it up. 40 is pick it up. 41 is pick it
Well, thank you all for stopping by. That's going to be it for this episode of Unbuckled Comics, and I look forward to talking to you again real soon. In the meantime, get out there and save the world, you bunch of heroes.